So for the participants that are joining us today, outside of Rebecca and Richard, my name is Shannon Brett, and I am the Curatorial Officer for the Griffith University Art Museum. And I'm very happy to be bringing you another in our series of panel discussions today for Rebecca Belmore's compelling exhibition, Turbulent Water, now open within our art museum at the Queensland College of Art, South Bank in Brisbane, until and through to the 19th of June. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I speak today, here in Meanjin, Brisbane, and also extend my respects and acknowledgements to all First Nations people watching today. Today's discussion between Rebecca Belmore and Richard Bell is a yarn between friends. As you may or may not know, Rebecca and Richard are long-term friends and artists who make powerful art about their experiences as First Nations people. Rebecca and Richard create the type of work that you simply cannot unsee, and they're works of art that settle deep within your psyche, and works of art that break down the system and show us how a colonized place's relationship with race pollutes and distorts actual equal opportunity. So I'm very delighted that we have the opportunity today, especially now, to collectively sit in on their conversation about friendship and perhaps life as a senior artist, culture, politics, and the museum. I'll leave the stage with you now, Richard and Rebecca, and everyone else. Please enjoy today's discussion between friends, and I'll see you soon.
Oh my God, the museum.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think
Okay.
about that?
Well, can I just start by apologising for being late? And, but I did lose my phone in Melbourne. I've got my daughter down there has rescued it for me apparently, and another friend's going to bring it home to me tomorrow. I literally just got to my place and charged up my tablet to see what time this thing started, and there was a knock on the door. One of the gallery assistants here was knocking on my door and gave me the option of coming down here and doing this. I'm very pleased to be here.
Great to see you. It's really great to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm very disappointed that you couldn't make it out here. To have your residency here would have been fantastic.
Well, maybe in the future. City. Maybe in the future, maybe in a few years.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not too long.
We'll just do it for ourselves.
Yeah. Who knows when we can travel again? I'd love to go back to Canada. I've been there many times before. My first trip was in 2004, where I went to Banff.
Yes.
What was the name of that residence?
The Banff Centre for the Arts.
Yeah. But the residency was called Jesus Loves You or something.
Jesus Loves Me.
Jesus Loves Me.
I was supposed to be in that, but I said I can't go under that umbrella.
Oh, mate, I wasn't going to pass up on a free trip to Canada.
But I think you met Kevin McKenzie there. No?
Yes, I did. Yeah. We became great friends. He was my roommate.
Wingman.
Hey, wingman. I don't know. Maybe he considered that I was his wingman. But we had a great time. He was a great guy.
What did you make there? What did you make there?
I made a painting actually. It was great. It was big. Of course.
In your face kind of thing?
Yeah. Of course.
What did it say?
I'm that shallow. That's all I can do. Just try to do something that upsets the colonizers.
Remember what it said?
Gee.
I love the mountains. Yeah.
Oh, I was terrified of the mountains. You know, like just looking at them. You know,
Oh, because you come from flatland.
yes, yeah, but you know, like I saw these huge rocks, you know, bursting out of the ground, and I couldn't help but imagine how that happened and when that happened and how terrifying that would have been. You know, like,
Were you able to sleep well?
No, I had trouble sleeping. I had a dream there that this beautiful young woman jumped into bed with me.
Oh my
But
God.
then her body parts started disappearing, and this leg was just kicking up against me. I was terrified. You wake up screaming.
Well, I think like theoretically, like I think like where Banff, you know, the town of Banff is situated, that would have been like a sacred site for Indigenous people back in the day. They didn't live there. They never resided there, but they went there to do ceremonies and, you know, to do their, you know.
Yeah, and the springs, were, you know, would help them heal as well. So, and then one of the locals came in and, you know, sang for us and got us to wear a black band, and well, it worked. You know, the dreams stopped, and you know, started getting some good sleep. Nice. Fabulous place. Yeah, everybody missed you there, and you're like, we all heard all about you. Well, maybe not all, but you know, a hell of a lot.
Not all of it.
No. Oh well.
But it was amazing when you came here to Vancouver in 2018, I think it was.
Yeah.
I had a big studio, like a big weird.
Yeah.
And your daughter came with you, and you know, you came, and we had like.
Yeah.
You know,
that was
amazing.
That was really beautiful. That's one of the.
Why were you here? I forget.
Pardon?
Why were you here in Vancouver?
Gee, I can't even remember. Geez, it was something. Oh, there was a show at the. Well, what's that?
Vancouver Gallery, maybe?
No. It was.
UBC at the university.
No.
I forget why you were here.
Go Gallery or something, you know, like.
Grant.
No, not Grant. The other one. Or Gallery.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's so amazing to see you. I was so pleased to have you come into my studio and, you know, like hang out and this bullshit, you know.
Yeah. Oh, Sarah really enjoyed that.
Yeah. So how was she?
Oh, she's really good. She's living in Melbourne now.
And she's still your agent or your assistant?
Pardon?
Is she still your assistant?
No. We had a bit of a parting of the ways in that regard. So, you know, she went and got herself a better job. Yeah. Well, what else?
A paying job.
Well, she's doing fantastic down there now. She's working for the Australian Centre for the Moving Image at one of the big institutions, like in Melbourne. She's doing really well. Really happy.
Did you see my show?
Yes, I did. It's fantastic. You know, like I've been telling all my friends, you know, go and have a look. You know, like it's.
That's hilarious.
It's really compelling. You know, like. I love the waterfall. You know,
like that. I made that for the Venice Biennale in 2005.
Wow. Yeah.
But I think the work was like ahead of its time, man. People didn't get it. As my husband joked, he said all those Europeans said, "Oh my God, why is she throwing all that blood at us?"
Oh, gee, I thought that was the best part. except for the reflection from the waterfall was, you know, fell onto the ground in front of it. You know, so, that just added another dimension to it.
Like more than 15 years ago.
Yeah, well.
How do you feel about aging and like looking back at works that were, you know, significant for your practice?
Yeah. Well, the other work that I really love is you know, the one about the murdered and missing Aboriginal women in Canada. Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw that was in Adelaide, actually.
Where? Oh,
Adelaide.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
when, what's it, Brenda
Yeah.
curated that.
Yeah, so you know, after that we went out, you know, like, and we got separated and that sort of thing, you know. So I just started yelling out, "Brenda!"
You know, like it's like did you ever meet James Luna?
No.
You know, the late, he's passed like maybe a couple of years.
Right.
Or anyways, he used to like in his performance to say Maria. So I think that's where when I would say Maria, when I hear it in, like, you know, in the piece, I think of him too. So it's amazing, like how names, like calling out names, is so like a lost people, you know, people who are lost to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was so great to be able to see those two works, but they, you know, with the others as well, you know, like it just, you know, was confirmation, you know, like you know, of, well, your ability as an artist, you know, like, and how you communicate with people. So interesting.
Like Richard, I think, like, as Indigenous people on our land, we must, you know, like, we must speak to and we must call out, you know, we must speak to and you know, like, make like solidify, like make present, you know, like through sculpture, through video, through whatever, painting, like just mark, you know, like, I think because like I have this little X here because that's how my grandmother signed her checks, because she did not speak English and she refused English, which I think is beautiful because you know, she was born in, I don't know, like 1913 or something like that. So so it's not that far back, you know, like the distance to the past is pretty short.
Yeah.
For us people.
Yeah. I feel compelled as well, you know, to make the work. You know, like I'm too old to teach anything too. You know, like I'm unteachable, unemployable. You know, so this is, you know, as good as it gets for me. You know, so.
So yeah, I read your bio today. What university, like what prized university did he go to?
Geez.
We're the same, you know, like I rejected school because I knew what I had to do on my own land, you know? No, we have
Oh, I was so lucky, you know, that I met the people that I did meet, you know, like along the way. You know, like they taught me so much, you know, like about our people. I didn't come from a particularly political family, you know, like, and I didn't know a lot of our history, you know. So to go while I was still a young man, you know, like, and to get lessons there was in Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne and those sort of places just helped me so much. You know, like those discussions, you know, like with those people have formed the basis of the research for my whole career. You know, so I think so.
I think, you know, and I've said this in the past, and I tried to, like, you know, move myself away from it for, like, because people write stuff and then regurgitate what is ever written about you. But I remember, like, being, you know, like in grade school, and realizing that they're not teaching our history. Even when I was like I was like a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, I thought, oh my God, like we don't exist. So that really, like that really affected me. And I think that's, that's the core of my practice, is like we exist, and this is our land, and like I have to speak about what is not spoken about, like it's like we have a strong history, like this is, I have, anyways, I think the land remembers us.
Yeah, well, so, certainly, as a young person, around the same age as you, I couldn't reconcile how we were so poor, and yet we were the owners of the land. And we had to pay rent.
Yeah.
It was so. That took a lot of coming to terms with. I never really resolved it in my childhood. It was as a young adult. I was fortunate enough to run into Aboriginal people in the cities, who had been involved in the struggle, and were quite well read, and weren't read. They heard all the stories, about our history and that sort of thing, and to listen to that, I was so intrigued. I followed them around. And I was the youngest one there, so every time they needed something, I had to go and run and get the fucking thing. So whatever it was, cigarettes, alcohol, pot, I was the runner.
I remember like in 1974, like being at my my grandma's home, my grandma and my grandpa, and I was like a 14-year-old, and there was a blockade, like there was an armed blockade at a nearby, like a reserve. They were like fighting about the pollution of the water from the paper mills and whatnot. And I remember my kukum, she only spoke our language, which I don't speak. And she was, looking at the TV and being angry. And I said to my mom, I said, what's kukum saying? She said, well, if I wasn't such an old woman, I would be there with my gun too.
That's staunch.
That's 14. I'm 14 and learning about what we don't get taught in, like the way school.
Yeah. There's a willful amnesia here, these people actually believe that they own this place. They don't actually understand that this is still ours and always will be, ours. So it's very difficult, for them to come to terms with that. That they actually come from somewhere else. They're Europeans. And anybody in the world can look at them, and you ask them where they come from, they'll say Europe. They're not going to say Australia or Canada or whatever. They're going to say Europe.
And I think that's why, we wake up in the morning on our Indigenous land, and we go outside, and we go like, oh, it's so beautiful to be on our land, no matter how it is.
Uh-huh.
So I think that, like, in terms of contemporary art and how we work, is we work from our land, really.
Yeah. Well,
and all of our thinking is bound to that,
Yeah. Well,
not Europeans.
Well, so look, I learned to think, like the landlord, like
Yeah.
not the tenant, like and that I was encouraged to do that, like in my early adulthood. So and I've hung on to that,
Yeah.
Despite what's like the situation should have been getting better, but like it seems that it's getting worse.
Yeah. I think that has to do with money. but I'm just curious, like how, like when did you start like working and like say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm gonna do, like artist? How old were you? When?
I think it was quite late. It was late in my life. It was like I was like 33 or 34, before I made that decision. Hey, what's on your mug there?
It says, I've done nothing.
Not guilty.
No, but it says, I've done everything.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
My husband got it for me. I'm left-handed, so it goes like this. Anyways.
Yeah, I saw it there before. Yeah, no, I did come to it very late. Like I just put it down to my gender. Like those males seem to learn a little bit slower than the females. So. Well, it certainly was in my case. Anyway.
Wow. So, like, did you do a piece at the Tate? Did they buy something, or were you in a residence or something like that?
At the Tate,
yeah.
They bought
a piece of
embassy. Yeah. So and pardon?
Does it say something?
Oh, the Tent Embassy. Well, like I activate it. Like.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'll activate it when I go to the Tate next year.
Yeah.
But there's videos playing in there when it's not activated. There's one which was made about the original Tent Embassy in Canberra in 1972. And there's footage
I saw some photos because I checked you out like earlier today.
Yeah.
And I saw photos like of the origin of that piece.
Right. Yeah. When I went to Sydney, I heard so much about the Tent Embassy. Like I was still in school at the time, and like.
In what school?
People who went.
What school?
Pardon?
What school were you in at that time?
I was in like a high school.
Oh wow! Like a youngster.
Yeah, Dalby State High School.
What was that like?
Pardon?
What was that high school like?
Well, it was way better than the one that I was in before it.
Estonia?
Oh no, nothing like that. It was quite the opposite. Like at that time, it was like free love and black is beautiful. So I ticked a couple of boxes there.
So like, how did you segue into like thinking like art was a way of being?
Well, I struggled. I played sport, and that took up a lot of time. And I think that's where I probably got some extra programming. From the society sort of thing. So.
Oh. You pick up sport, and where'd you end up? Like, how did you find contemporary?
Well, I was doing great until I lost my speed.
So that's when you turned 30.
No, like when I turned 20.
Okay. Oh my God, art, save me, art, save me.
Oh well, plan B was to get an education, you know, like and that.
But what were you seeking in your education about, if you remember at that time? About yourself in the context of your society?
Yeah, well, that was my aim.
Yeah.
But I wasn't very a very good student in my last 2 years of high school, which is, you know, like where you build your scores and that to go on and that. You know, I was too busy, you know, playing sport and chasing girls, you know, sort of thing. So it was a wasted couple of years. And it took me years to recover from that. You know, like took more than a decade. You know, before I could recover from that.
For myself, like I had like a lot of family shit happen, and people, difficulties, and then I think I ended up at art school and I left there after 2 years. I only stayed 2 years, and I thought, wow, I don't need this. I can go do it myself. And I think
You're right.
Yeah, because I thought, wow, they can't teach me anything. But they don't know anything about us.
No. I didn't want to go to art college. So I basically found people who I thought knew about art, and I'd question them. I'd cook meals for them. Give them alcohol, drugs occasionally. While I was questioning, I'd cook for them. And interrogate them about this thing called art. I was interested when a guy told me that I could still protest in art and not get arrested. I thought, wow, that's great.
Yeah. So, well, I always say, like, art saved me from going to jail, maybe.
Yeah.
Although I would never have done that. I would never have gone that far, but I can see how, in a macho culture, that it could be, that's how you would end up. But I'm just thinking, like what was your first, what do you recall, like your first piece that you made that could be considered what you did art?
Oh, the first time I really got in and made a show of contemporary art was at the Institute of Modern Art here in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And the curator offered me a show at the Institute of Modern Art, and I just said, he asked me if I wanted to show at the Institute of Modern Art. I said, yeah, of course I do. And then what happened there? That's right. He started talking about what kind of show he wanted. He said, he wanted an installation show.
Installation
and when he finished, I just said, "What the fuck is an installation show?" and he described it, and I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So.
I remember there was like this crazy, like, Indigenous radio program, and they called me up, and I was in the northern part of Canada in Fort McMurray, and they said they would call me, but they called me because it's live on radio, and they're like comedians, like comedians. So they said, "Oh, so we're looking on the yellow pages, like under installation." Installation artist. So, like, super hilarious. I was like, okay, you mother.
I literally didn't know what installation was. I would just go.
Do you know what? I'm going to confess here. I didn't know what the Venice Biennale was when I was for my 2 years.
Oh.
I was more interested in, like, making work for, on the ground here in my, my environment, on my land,
Yeah. I I love the scope that it gave me, the breadth that that gave me, but I had to feed my family. So paintings is the go. Like it's a go-to thing. Like in art. So but yeah, that was my first, when I first got serious about contemporary art.
Yeah.
I think that was 91.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, for me it would be like I started in like 87, and maybe by 92 I understood what I was doing.
What were you doing up till then?
No, I was just like I was dealing with trying to figure out what to do with my life. And family, and having responsibilities, but in the end I set myself free, and I think that art was like it was amazing, because it's like you can just go outside. You are constantly thinking and working and like seeing things, like it's amazing.
Did you live on a reserve, a reservation?
No, I lived in a tiny white community on the Trans-Canada Highway, and we have one highway that goes through the country, and it was a place called Uppsala, and there were maybe 250 people.
Damn.
Maybe four Indigenous families.
Wow.
But also
that made up 200 of the 250.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Tiny.
Wow. I'm trying to imagine that.
No, but I think when a highway runs through it, that's the pipeline to like thinking there's somewhere else to go.
Oh.
Like, how it is, like in the wide open country, like it's so vast, and the imagination is, it's free and wild,
and wild, yeah. Whereabouts exactly?
It's in Northern Ontario, like Lake Superior, like the Great Lakes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
At the very end tip. Yeah.
And you said Fort McMurray. Like, where's that?
That's like in Northern Alberta.
Right. Okay.
No, I mentioned that.
I remember being in Edmonton one year, and
north of Edmonton.
Well, it must be cold, because I remember stepping out from a hotel onto the street, and it was like 28 below zero at 11 o'clock in the morning. I thought, oh my God, I had to go in and just rethink my.
Imagine how like Indigenous people survived back in the day, like their technology.
I don't know how they would have done it. Gee. With that extreme cold, and then it does get hot as well. Like those sort of extreme temperatures, man, that must have been really, really tough people.
What about your people? They must have been tough people too.
Yeah, well, out in the desert country, it gets cold, but nothing like.
I only know it from like films and shit like that,
Yeah. Oh well, that's.
What do you think about films made about Australia and in Australia?
Well, there hasn't been a lot of them, to be honest. Very few of them.
The one like Princess of the whatever. Remember the?
Oh well, there was Jeddah, which is like this. Oh my God! Marbach and Jeddah. You're like.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that?
No.
Jeddah? Oh.
No. Is it good?
No.
Are your people like our Indigenous people, like Aboriginal people of your country making films? Of course they are.
Yeah. There's a whole heap of them. There was one young fellow here won an award in Cairn about
Okay.
6-7 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah. There's quite a few, like here now. There's like a guy called Ivan Sen from one of my tribal groups, the Comori in northern New South Wales. He makes really beautiful films, and that's.
So Richard, like, what do you see for the future of your work? Like, what are you gonna? How do you think about it? Like, how do you? I think I'm gonna make art till I'm gonna die, but like we live in like this crazy COVID time and shit, and then we're aware that we're billions of people on this planet.
Yeah.
How do we go forward with our ideas and like making work for the future, really?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to just sit around, like, and think, and try to imagine, a better world. Like, imagine a better world for myself. Imagine, myself being better. Imagine, everybody just being better. Like, if we're not going to be better, we're absolutely doomed here. So,
yeah.
Well, I try to be positive, because it's so easy to just give up and just say there's no hope.
I feel like sometimes I feel like trapped by, I don't know about art, but in life, and like how do you like get over that and like move forward and try to do our job as artists, I think, which is to point to things and to see and make scene, like, and how I think that's what we do. That's what I think as Indigenous people, we've always been, we've always had our people who were creative, like thinkers.
Yeah, absolutely. I tried to find as many of them as I could. Like, growing up, like, I was enthralled to just be sitting around and listening, to what was going on and that sort of thing. So, I've always been observing. I've been observing people since I was like 8 years old or something. So, and I grew up in like in a Christian family, like, and I saw what was going on, because it was very little of it resembled Christianity. So,
I like that twisted Christianity.
Oh, it was, and we have in this country we have a very religious prime minister. Oh my God, he's
really. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We have one, but thank God he's gone.
well, we've still got this guy. Like,
wow. Like what Christianity did to our people, man.
Yeah. Yes. Like,
suck the language out of the tongue. Suck
Yeah.
the language out of the tongue.
Well, it hasn't stopped. Like, here they have. They used to have a portfolio, like the Department of Aboriginal Affairs. It wasn't a Department of Aboriginal Affairs. Like, it was a department that allocated money, like, to companies, that had found their way into the Aboriginal world, like, and made up this Aboriginal industry, that goes ahead and does things, like what they think, we need, or what they think that we want, even, so.
So, like, what does that manifest like? Give me an example of like what does that look like?
Okay, well, they'll come to an Aboriginal reserve and they'll say, "Oh, look, here we need to build like 20 more houses, for the thing." Like, and they tell the people, it's like some new guy gets a job, some new white guy gets a job, and he comes out to think, "Oh, these conditions are atrocious. We need to do this, that, and the other thing." Blah blah blah. Yeah. 2 years later, they build 4 houses. And,
like in this country, there's like communities, like in northern communities, that don't have like water that's safe to use.
oh,
So
yeah.
I think it's like, I don't know. It's like, so, and we still have like, all that it exists and we know it's there, and yeah, it's very difficult, I think, to not do something about it, like in terms, even like as an artist, like to say something.
Well,
we can solve it, but we can point to it, I think.
Yeah, well, that stands out in your work too.
Yeah.
So there's so many examples of what they do to us. But like it's the tactics that they use used against you. They use against us,
Yeah.
but they learn from the experience of what they did to you. So we've got to, they've become even more refined.
I think like, starvation was like a tactic in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then like to eat the Bible.
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, look,
that's a bad visual.
Yeah, like your works in this show are, mainly, well, they're all performance. Like, is there? Do you only do performance? Like,
No. I make all kinds of.
Right.
I make photographs and like sculptures. I think maybe
Right.
performance and sculpture would be my strength.
Right. Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Ideas for video and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how do you approach your performances? What's your process?
I think the core of it is like to go outside, meaning go outside of my house, go outside into public space, and to visually say something about something, like to visually make something that speaks about something that I care about, like murdered and missing women, for example. In that piece is to go out and barefoot into poison land, which is where everybody pees and it's poisonous, like in the street, like in the site downtown east of Vancouver, and just to like to occupy space. I think that's what I think. Right. Occupy space and speak about something in a visual, poetic manner. So it is art, like maybe it's not overt protest, but it is some kind of poetic protest.
Oh, it certainly is. Yeah. Well, it is protest as well. You're like,
absolutely.
Yeah, like it's visual. It's there. You're like you're asserting yourself. You're asserting your rights. Your authority. Like
yeah, absolutely. And my knowing, like my witnessing. We know this happens, and like, yeah, I'm here barefoot on this ground.
Yeah.
Wow. All the hideous murder happened.
Yeah. Oh.
It's not over. Like that was a time. It's very particular, but it's global.
Yeah. Well, colonization. It was global activity. It was a very popular global activity, like not that long ago.
It was like people think it's ancient, like in a land like Canada, it's only 100 and Canada is like only 100 and under 200 years old, you know.
Right.
I know like people were here long before that, but in time, you know, like in terms of like thinking about historic time, it's like nothing. But amazing how the pressure, like the increasing pressure of colonization and what it did to us as a people.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about it, you know, like we have to, you know, acknowledge, you know, that colonization went hand in hand with capitalism, you know, so which itself is quite a modern phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's like
and together those things they brought the whole planet to its knees.
yes, like because you know, like we bring the poison out of we make poison, and so we poison everything.
Yeah,
and we create the poison from the earth itself, you know, like, so that's a very interesting, like weird, like how will we continue? You know, we have this COVID thing, now we have the variants, whatever, like you guys are safer than us, but I think like we'll create more for our bodies to be attacked, I think.
Yeah, well,
I'm getting like a Debbie Downer.
well, yeah, well, it's frightening when you hear.
It's serious, you know.
Yeah, like the modern farming methods. You know, like, God damn it, you know, there's, you know, the pressure on the land, you know, the ecologies, you know, all around. Like nature doesn't like to have one particular crop growing, you know, in one particular area. You know, like they send in insects, you know, to, you know, or whatever, you know, like or fire or whatever, you know, to destroy them, you know. And then to stop the insects, you know, like we send in pesticides. You know, like you say, we're just, you know, poisoning the place with these, you know, practices.
Well, Richard, I think the Earth doesn't need us.
No,
really.
no.
We'll like destroy ourselves, but make great art.
So insignificant. You're like,
great art about it.
Pardon?
So we'll make great art about it.
Okay.
No.
Where's your next show? Where's your next show?
I can't say.
Okay. Okay, well, what you gonna do?
I'm gonna like, yeah.
Stick it up them. Okay.
Yeah. Where's it?
Yeah. Geez. Have you seen Kevin McKenzie around?
He's in Winnipeg. He's a professor now.
Oh, he's still there.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, he's been there for a long while now. He left.
He's in Brandon, out of Winnipeg. Why are we talking about him?
I don't know. Well, he's my good mate, and I haven't seen him for years. I don't know what he's doing.
Well, he's well.
Right. Okay. I've just got a suggestion here.
Well, like ask her.
Okay. Now, well, so people, you know, have these. Well, I consider myself to be the elder terrible of Australian art. You know,
I like that. I'm going to send you a T-shirt.
Oh, what do you see yourself as? You know?
A wise old woman.
Oh, That's very dignified. You know, like,
No, I think I'm maybe like hopefully 2/3 through my game, and I have 1/3 left.
right. Gee.
Like time marches on, trudges, you know. Like
Okay. Well, man, that would put me at 100. Like, you know, like, I don't think this country can put up with me for that long.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter how terrible it is, like we can make art that is hopeful too.
Yeah. Yeah. I strongly believe that, you know, that we have to, you know, be positive, you know, in some of our work at least. You know,
yeah, I struggle with it all the time, like because I'm, you know, pessimistic, but also, you know, I have like my optimistic, you know, bent. So.
oh, there's a face popped up in the top left-hand corner.
Hey, you guys, I just wanted to, I'm watching your conversation and I was just thinking, Richard, like Rebecca is talking about the way that she places herself in performance, but what about you? What about these videos? Oh, when were those films? In Venice, also Richard, you in Venice, but I'm thinking about, remember those videos that you did perhaps about 10 years ago in the boxing ring?
Oh yeah. Well, that was Richie. I created this magnificent black hero called Richie.
Richard, sorry, Rebecca, have you seen this work?
No.
Oh, it's hilarious.
I think it's on YouTube, I think.
Okay. I'll look it up tomorrow.
It's called Us versus Them. It's only like 2.5 minutes. Yeah. Like 2.5 minutes is the average attention span of an adult. You know, so.
All my video works are 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, I've never done a 2.5 minute video since.
Can you tell us about the Venice work, Richard, and how you came to bring your work on this boat and this whole situation that went down at the last Biennale?
At the last Biennale?
Mm.
Oh, well, I put in a real deadly proposal, you know, to represent Australia. You know, like, you know, in Venice, you know, like, and the fuckers knocked me back, you know. So, you know, like, I sulked around for a few days, you know, and then I thought, fuck them, I'm going to go anyway. You know, this is such a good idea. So I thought of ways that I could take this project to Venice. You know, when I was talking to some people, and I stole some of their ideas, you know, like about what I could do. You know, so I thought, yeah, I'll go over there. I'll build a model of the Australian Pavilion, and I'll stick it somewhere significant where a lot of people will see it and that sort of thing. And then one of my friends, you know, suggested that I put it on a barge, you know, and I thought, gee, I had a great idea. I should put it on a barge instead. And then I'd been thinking about doing a show in Venice for, you know, quite some time, and I'd spoken to some of my friends there, and one in particular who told me that if I was to do a project in Venice, that I had to have a team in Venice, you know, like of locals. And so the first thing after I decided that I was going to do this was I contacted her. Her name's Franca Tamasari. She lives in Venice, is an anthropologist who had been working in Australia for 20 years and is still an Australian citizen. So I told her what I wanted to do, and so we got to work, and then we got a team to build the model. We had another team looking for venues, like for the embassy, to store the boat, and also like a venue for a party, because I couldn't go over there without having a party. So I've got, and we just, and then I think around then I told Josh Milani, my heart deal, that fuck it, I'm going to do this thing anyway. So, and basically, I had the resources of the gallery, Milani Gallery here behind me. I had my friends in Venice, and we got money from Arts Queensland and the Australia Council. Even though they knocked me back for the thing, they gave me some money too.
Wow, that's great.
I believe I had some friends on that panel, who helped me out.
Probably. What was your experience like then, Rebecca, when you were at the Biennale?
Well, as I said earlier, when I went to art, or like
Mountain.
brief sojourn, like of 2 years, I had no idea what a Venice Biennale was, because I was just too interested in, I didn't think about anything but working, on the ground here and, in our own territory and whatnot, and our own. But when I got there, well, then I, of course, as you practice, then you learn that, contemporary art has there's a system, and there's a way to I guess, exhibit in certain places and whatnot. And I ended up at the Venice Biennale in 2005. And for me, it was a big deal, like being the first Indigenous woman to officially, represent Canada in the Canadian Pavilion, in the big Giardini, was huge. So I went there a couple of times, to check out the site, and then, here on the ground in Canada, people were saying, well, someone actually said to me, like at a press conference, like a person came up to me and she said, so will you be representing your people at the Venice Biennale? Like a white woman. No, I'll be representing you. that was like a kick in the face, or a little punch in the face, maybe, without any bruising. So I think I really, I was living here in Vancouver, and I was going to Italy and Venice for the first time in my life, being a less traveled Indian on the planet. And so going to there and seeing all the fountain, the little fountains and every little, little plaza. And then being here on this West Coast, where there's water features in every condo building, and knowing that we send our waste out into the ocean, our like bodily fluids and stuff, hopefully they're cleaned. And so that's how I put it together. I put together like this idea of like how violence, colonization came from the east to the west, for the most part, in Canada, and then how water, fountains, a fountain, like how water is essential to all living creatures, like it's part of our existence on this, in this beautiful world that we live in. So yeah, that was 2005. And I think the piece was not really well received, but I think now in 2021 that it's in Brisbane, I think it's grown into its own as a work.
I think,
This idea of taking like struggling in the ocean and carrying a bucket of water and throwing it to the screen to turn it into blood. So this idea of blood to water to the water is you know, it's the essential, it's essential to life. You know? And it's only 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Powerful 2.5 minutes.
Have you managed to make another one that's 2.5 minutes?
Yeah, I made like at least like 3.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of debate about the effectiveness of art, you know, political art and that sort of thing. What do you think art can do?
Well, I think as you know, as a maker, like, so it's my life now to make and to create, you know, visual, you know, experiences for people, be it, you know, video or sculpture or photographs. I think, you know, art is part of, you know, human nature, and I think we have always been artists, you know. And I think particularly, I think on this land, on this continent, you know, Indigenous art is part of our, I think we've always had artists. And we've never maybe, you know, not like contemporary artists, but we've always been, you know, it's human to make. It's human to make.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's what, you know, that's what I'll continue to do, as you will, Richard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, I got nothing else to do.
Yeah. What do you do when you get up?
Rebecca, can I ask you a question? Just very briefly off topic. Have we been watching the sunset in your studio?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I have like
it's
candles.
Fantastic. Yes. You have candles. Yeah. Great. Because the cross is.
Do you know, like, I grew up without electricity, so.
Yeah, me too.
The world can't remember that anymore. You know, like when you
people can't remember without phones.
Like when you sit in your house and the light fades, and you wait till the last moment before you know, put the light up. Those were simpler times. Perhaps not. Yeah.
Yeah. I lived in you know, a tin shack, you know, like that was bulldozed. You know, we had no electricity, no.
What's the video?
No water.
Us too. We had like a little well with a pail.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We're not that old either. So that's how, in like conditions for Indigenous people in our countries, it's like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's still people living, you know, like in tin shacks and cars, you know, like you know, in Queensland, like, and I know the same's in New South Wales. I don't know about the other states, but certainly it's happening here. Like,
yeah.
And,
guys, can I just interrupt for 1 second, and I'm just mindful of the time here, and I'm wondering if we'd like to have any kind of closing statements about friendships in the arts and kind of long-term careers in terms of the style or the type of art that you make. Yeah, I'm just mindful of the time, and I'd love to just hear.
I love you, Richard Bell.
Oh, I love you too.
That's fist bump. Come on.
Oh. There. Is that it? Yeah.
Come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Oh, look. Geez, friendship in art. I think there should be more of it.
It can be like an unfriendly place.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, but when you make good connections, it's amazing. So.
Yeah.
I love going to Indigenous art conferences because we all get to hang out and think, complain, and argue, and you know.
Oh, that Banff one that you boycotted, you know, that was fantastic. You know, there was like 45 Indigenous artists. You know, like.
My sister was there. She met you.
Pardon?
My sister was there.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, fuck. Oh, Michael was there too.
Okay. Well, yes.
Yeah. Oh, mate. He shares my passion for shoes. You know, like.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, Richard and Rebecca, I just want to thank you, and we'll call it there. And thanks for a great conversation. It was lovely to hear you speak today. But
I'm sorry for being late again.
Okay, Richard, we got there in the end. It's fantastic.
You asked me if I had something to say. You can go now.
Oh, stop.
So good to.
No, please don't go now. While you're on screen, I want to take this opportunity just to remind everyone who's here, the participants today, and also anyone that tunes in later, that we do have another discussion in 2 weeks' time. And this is a panel about First Nations curators, and the panel members are Wanda Nanabush, Brenda Croft, Megan Tamati Quinnell, and Ray Saunders, with myself as chair of that discussion. So I just would like to remind all participants and everyone here to follow our social media and check your emails, look out for that RSVP and how to link into the conversation. But which will be, around this time, so a usual 1 p.m. Brisbane time, Saturday, the 22nd of May. But guys, Rebecca and Richard, thank you for joining us today. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, don't lose your phone.
Bye. Love you.
Bye.